welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining Property Friday, another headline show. Looking forward to this. Hi Will, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you, Chris.
And Pete, of course. Just for those that haven't come on before, what we do at Holborn on the property side of things that Pete and I work very closely on is find suitable properties that we've done the due diligence on, we've done the research, we're happy about the demand, that's what we do, and then we refer you to our property partners, developers like Will. So that's how it all works. So I thought we'd start for a change. Pete, a little bit around what's happening in the UK property market. Where have you been in your Ford Anglia?
Well, it's interesting. One thing I will say with Will's project here is it's met the criteria. Now you might think, well, that it needs to be that case anyway. If I tell you that 14 of the last projects I've looked at, only 2 have got through. I mean, we are hard for a reason. It's really important to make sure that we give best advice in terms of the areas that you go. And certainly York is absolutely top of the tree. There's a few areas that I always consider I'd put in the same hat. Winchester is one, but again, it's as rare as hen's teeth to find something in Winchester. And it is exactly the same thing in York as well. So, I'm really pleased to be working with Will on this. It's a great location, good price point. And I do believe it's something that you can tuck away for your longer term gains. Something that I'm very keen on, and I know Will is as well, is in these markets, when it gets difficult times, you want something that's got good capital appreciation in the medium term. Don't go thinking you're going to get 10% in a year. That's not going to happen. The days of that are well and truly over for now. But when you look at the 10-year profile, and that's what I spend a lot of my time doing, York is at the top of that curve. In other words, it's understated at the moment. So I'd suggest to you over the 3-4 year period, you're going to get reasonable capital growth. But the other thing that you're going to get is really good lettings with yields that have still got a little bit of ground left in them. So you can't win on all of the fronts. This is something I would just love to get across to investors. You're not going to get massive capital growth and massive rental increases with yields that are getting, longer. See, when people come to me, and I did have somebody come to me only a month ago and say, we're really interested in properties in central London with a 10% yield that are in the right areas where I'm going to get capital growth. Well, I'm not being funny. We've got more chances in Lord Lucan on Shergar. Those sort of things don't come around. I'm sure Will back me on this. So what we look for, and Will's done a great job on this, is find something that's real. In other words, it has got the fundamentals in place. You will see capital growth. You will get a good rent. There's demand for the properties that you buy. And that is all that you need. And the other adage, which you all would have heard, there's only one thing you've got to do to make money in property, and that's be in it. If you try second guessing when the market is going to spike, you'll miss it. And so take the longer term trends. In natural fact, there's only been a slight softening. All the soothsayers were saying, oh, well, UK property is going to drop 20-30%. It hasn't, and it won't. If we see a 2-3% drop, never mind, because guess what? Your rents have just gone up, and so your yields are strong. Just play the middle ground, as I call it. I hope you agree with that, Will.
Absolutely, and looking for quality and looking for quality tenants as well. The better product you buy, the better locations you get invested into, the easier it is when times are a little bit harder. And our rental book at the moment, the properties are absolutely fully let. I mean, I had a listing today. We haven't re-let anything in the last week because we've got nothing to rent. It's all rented.
And that's in all the newspapers.
Occupied our portfolio.
Yeah, it's in all the press. The rental demand is just out of control in the UK. Out of control. So I think they're saying there's 500,000 properties short for renting in the UK, which is a terrible thing, really, if you're in the UK looking for fun. Anyway, let's go back to more positive. You've got a great track record. I know that. You and I have worked together for years. You've got properties at the moment obviously down up in Edinburgh, you've got York now, you've also got Oxford, you've got other stuff. So hopefully later on we can touch on some of that stuff. But for the time being, Will, this is the home. This is where Guy Fawkes was born, by the way, York, for anyone that needs the history lesson, and also where the Terry's chocolate orange is grown. So, Will, over to you. Tell us all about York.
That is very true. Well, look, just in case we've got a few people that aren't British, I'm sure we've got plenty. Or then there's York on the map. You can see it's kind of bang in the middle of Great Britain. And Chris is right. It is a very famous city, has a huge amount of tourism. In fact, the second most visited tourist city other than London in the UK. It is famous for its sweets and its chocolate, with Terry's Chocolate Factory, which was actually bought out by Nestled. So Nestled are one of the big employers now. So if you've had a Kit Kat to keep you going this morning, I'm sure Chris has probably had a couple. That's where it was made. And
I'm still sad to know that they're going to get rid of Caramac. I haven't got over that shock. Anyway, sorry, Will.
That's all right. But it's a beautiful city, and there's an image there of the city. It's very historic. It's a walled city. And Pete's also mentioned already that it isn't going to be a city that sees huge development in terms of sort of high-rise developments and an urban sprawl. So it's very much a very visited city. You go shopping in York, if you're from that area, that's where you go shopping to buy the nice bits and bobs. And it's a hustling and bustling city. It's a lovely place to be. And we're delighted to have secured our second project in the city that we're going to show you about now. We've talked a little bit about the fundamentals of the city, but there's strong economic growth happening. There's very low unemployment. At IP Global, we always look very closely at this data, probably more than you lot want to listen to sometimes, but unemployment is a key indicator about property values and, of course, what people are earning. And you can see on the right-hand side, the upper graph there, the higher graph on the right, that shows you where unemployment was in the early 2010, which is still actually very low. Major cities in the UK operate at that sort of level now. But today, it's extremely low. It's covering, but I think it's about 3%, isn't it? About 3.5%. It's just covered by my screens here. But then you can see that Oxford economics have it tapering down even further by 2035. So in terms of unemployment and the prediction, it's actually one of the lowest we've ever dealt with, which means that people are working, they've got money, they can rent properties and they can buy properties. The bottom graph is quite interesting data as well. It looks at sort of what income brackets are being earned. And it shows you there in 2010 that there were not so many people in the top bracket of income, the grey bar, earning over 100,000 euro. You can fast forward to today. There's now 12,000 people. So that's a massive increase. Fast forward to 2035. They're predicting over 30,000 people are working in that top bracket. So that's quite powerful as well. And we compare that data to Manchester to Birmingham, and it really stands out stronger in York than any other city. So this is a wealthy place, the Knightsbridge of the North, it's known as. Forgive me, I've just lost my. I just want to make sure I'm hitting the right button.
Another thing that's true, Will, is that within the city boundaries, if you like, you're not allowed to build anything higher that you can't see the cathedral.
Correct. Yeah, good, very well remembered, Chris. And you can see that here in these regeneration projects. You can see that here in the building heights. Normally we'd show you big towers being built, big offices coming out the ground in Birmingham and Manchester, which is of course exciting, but they can't do that in York. They're very strict. The planning laws are very strict. So there is regeneration going on. There's York Central, which is a massive project of regeneration, which is very close to our site actually. So there's going to be about 2,500 new homes going in there. And lots of employment, over 6,500 jobs as well. There's Nestled South, which is where the Rowntree's factory is. Obviously, it became Nestled. They're investing a lot of money into property and building, over 300 homes. And then there's also Castle Gateway, which is a riverside community in the centre of the city, which is £20 million. So there's a lot going on. One of the interesting stats here on the bottom here, we sort of look at the rental market and obviously the sales market very closely. But JLL predict 12% growth by 2027, which, as Pete said, is not huge, but it's reliable and it's realistic and it's also very sustainable. A lot of us are sitting here in the Middle East thinking, wow, the market's moving, but how sustainable is it? And this is going to
go there.
Yeah, this is going to be something we can sort of predict. And if you look at the time to sell, staggering actually how quickly you sell a property in York. Time to sell is very slow. So, you know, far quicker than Newcastle, Liverpool and Leeds, the neighbouring cities. Massive stat. You're looking at just 60 odd days to sell your property in York. So that's quite interesting. That shows you there's a lot of buyers out there. It has famous universities. There is always a lot of pressure on housing stock from the universities. A lot of international students. Over a quarter of the students at the University of York are actually international. What does that mean? Probably means they're fairly wealthy, probably means they want to rent very good accommodation, and probably means they're not always looking at sort of the halls, you know, the university campus. They could very much pushed into sort of private rental sector. So it's always good to have.
Point, Will, I hope you don't mind me jumping in there. Down in Southampton, we've got a site that we've got 102 apartments. Right next to it, there's a brand new block built. So we've been letting out our 1 beds there at about 1,100 a month. The 2 beds at about 1,250. This brand new block came in. It was targeted specifically at the university students of Southampton, and they focused on the Chinese fraternity there. They're getting £1,650 a month. We couldn't believe it that they firstly marketed that. Secondly, they let it all. So these international students, they come with a good sized wallet.
Absolutely, and I'll often pay the rent in 6 months or 1 year up front. We find as well, which is very comforting, because some people say, I don't want to rent my property to students. Well, they can be extremely good tenants. So great university city, very young city, very vibrant, and a lot of these people are educated highly and then staying in the skilled workforce in the science parks and in the industries that are in York. I put that the wrong way around. Look, I've just noticed. But if looking at the economy, you know, there's a big financial services and professional services industry. You've got 9,700 people working in that industry in York, which is a really good number. Real estate, there's a lot of developers, there's a lot of architects, there's a lot of people related to the property industry that live and work in York. You've got 1,800 people working in that industry in real estate. Persimmon Homes, also a FTSE 100 listed developer, are headquartered there, just on the outsides of the city. Biotech, you know, this is obviously a growing industry, 16,000 people, lots of startup happening as well, and close links to the university. Because I'm not very good at the order. Digital and IT and creative, there's 3,000 people. Obviously, we spoke about the chocolate, the Kit Kats that Chris loves. You know, you've got over 2,000 people working at Nestled. And then you've got a lot of people working in rail. Actually, Network Rail are headquartered here. They have 5,500 people working in rail. And then tourism, you know, the second most visited city outside of London, with a huge amount of income coming into local business from tourists from all over the world. Any more questions about the sort of sustainability of York's economy? And any adds that you'd like to make, Pete or Chris?
People will please do add questions at the bottom when we go through them as we're going along. We might like to make it interactive. Kieran always helps me out on that one. So yeah.
I've got one little interesting stat that the government came out 2 weeks ago to say that 41% of the people that go to universities end up staying in the locality. And so this underpins the long-term effect of some of those higher students that we talked about. So they'll go through the university courses, they stay in the locality, they then typically start with salaries of £70,000-75,000 a year. First thing they do is buy a property. So it underpins the values.
Yeah, and that's something that didn't happen in the past, right? You know, a lot of people go to sort of cheaper to earn, to educate themselves, and then they pull back into London, right? This hustle and bustle of living in London. It is a great city, but more and more young people are priced out of moving to London to start their careers, and they end up realizing that life's not too bad elsewhere. So, right. Well, look, you can see a nice development on the screen. This building already exists. One reason why we like this project at the moment, because there's very little risk in terms of the development of this structure. The structure's there. It's actually an office building, a nice looking office building, that's being converted to residential. So there's going to be a small commercial unit in the building with a restriction on what it can be used for. And then there's going to be 31 apartments across the sort of 2 floors, ground, first and second. So nice looking building. Each unit has a parking space as well. The developer,
That's extremely valuable in York as well, because the parking's not the best. So I think that's a fantastic bonus to have your own parking space.
definitely, yeah. Now
so
the developer,
for Will, looking at that picture on the top right there, so you've got the ground floor, which is the red or the brown, if you like. Then you've got the second floor, which is the white, and then we've all got a window at the top. Is that right?
yeah, you've got some nice units on the top floor as well, which have got plenty of light on that side
So
of the
it's
building.
two floors.
Yeah, ground, first and second.
Oh, okay, ground first and second. So, and they've got floor to ceiling windows by the look of things on the top.
The top floor, yeah, the top floor have got a little bit more light.
Yeah, it was great. Okay, sorry.
No, fine. I mean, look, often, you get office conversions that don't look very nice. They can make a lot of sense. We've done a few, but this is actually a very nice looking building, as you can see. Top developer, Hemsley Group. We partnered with them on our previous project that we sold out last year called Fifth Grove, which is just on the other side of the city. They're building that project as we speak. They're due to hand that over in January, which is bang on track. So since we actually launched that scheme, they've knocked down the structure that was there. They built the shell and core, and they're now sort of beginning to fit out the final fit out. So, really good company, been around 40 years, very strong developer, really good financial backing, and a really good track record in this locality. So, in terms of developers, in terms of what you guys probably get exposure to, certainly one of the most experienced. We've committed to purchasing the whole block. That's how we work at IP Global. We've secured it, and we're bringing it to market now. We've just literally launching it, obviously, as we speak. Right, where is it? Now, you can see here, this map. I'm actually going to come away from it fairly quickly. It's just my trigger, because I'm going to show you a bit more of a layered map and really give you a bit of detail in terms of what's around this location. But you can see here, this is the train station where my cursor is. And this is the site. And this is about 1.2 kilometers to take an L-shaped walk up to the place. So very central. And also very close to the central investment area that I've mentioned, which is going to create over 2,500 homes and lots of jobs and retail. So it's going to be a nice part of the city to be investing in and watching and seeing this little part of the city develop over the coming years. Now, I'm just going to change my screen. I'm hoping you can see a Google.
Yep. We had to look at you for a few seconds, but we're okay now.
Sorry about that. Right. So we've built these maps recently. They're really cool. So I can just tick these things. So you can see the sites here. Now, if I tick transport, right, we can see the station pops up. We can see how close it is to the station. Look, this is the scale here. Do you see that? 200 meters. See the scale there?
Yep.
And you've got 2 bus stops right by the building as well. So getting into town is an absolute walk in the park. Now, what else do you want to be living near? You want to live near cafes, restaurants, bars. I mean, all of these places pop up as sort of well-known places that you could pop out and have dinner at or go and have a coffee or work from. You've got the Ivy, you've got Betsy's Cafe, you've got Blossom Cafe, Roots York. Lots of lifestyle right on your doorstep. I'll skip points of interest. I've got education. Main university up here, York St John's, and then you've got the University of York here. So you've got 2 universities not far from the development.
And the cathedral, can you point that out?
Yeah, I'll just do that. I'll come on points of interest. I've just zoomed out a little bit further. There's another college just a little bit further out. If I go points of interest, here we go. One of these will be the cathedral. You've got the York Castle Museum. You've got the York Barbican. You've got York Minster. You've got the museum. You've got the art gallery, and I think the cathedral's just hiding somewhere, but it's. I can't actually search on this map because it's a layered map. It's obviously very central.
It did pop up, actually. York Minster did pop up when you did it. It's one of those.
Did it? There you go.
There you go.
I'm watching. Yeah. Don't you worry. Beautiful cathedral.
Absolutely stunning, yeah. And then if we look at employers, this is quite interesting. I've mentioned those companies on the previous slide, but that's where Network Rail are based. This is where Aviva are based, public transport company. I guess this is some sort of digital tech startup, Edge 45. These guys are involved in the rail industry. Siemens.
Is this technology okay and accessible to our wealth managers?
Yes, I can share the layout map. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Persimmon Homes are over here, and York Science Park is over here. But it's a small city. I mean, you know, look, I mean, I've put that down. That's the furthest point away that we've looked at while we've been looking at this map. And that is a 14-minute drive, you know. So it's quite a small city. It's quite easy to get around. I've mentioned regeneration. You can see that's the big regeneration part of the city, which is very close to where we are. So yeah, so hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea in terms of the proximity, that you're very near everything. You know, you're just over a kilometre to the station, and then just a little bit further into the centre of York. Right, I should be back to the previous map. Now, what have we got here? So we've obviously got a lovely residential building. I've mentioned parking with all the units, 31 one-bedroom apartments. It makes all the price points really attractive. Prices from 190 up to 240. Most of the units are either 190, 200 or 205. There's just one unit that's bigger that's priced at 240. They've all got parking in those prices. Parking is at least worth probably sort of £15,000 if you were to sort of think of it as an individual value. They're well-sized units. They're small units. They're perfect for young people looking for value, looking to be central. The building is, you know, fairly easy to maintain. It'll have a very sensible service charge at £1.76 per square foot. We've got a full schedule for that. And we're estimating most of the yields conservatively at 5%, but probably realistically come completion in just about a year, we're probably looking at about 5.5. And it's a typical kind of 250-year lease. Payment plan is our usual £2,500 to reserve, which is refunded, and then 20% on exchange, and then the full 80% on completion. Obviously, you can speak to the guys at Holborn about mortgages and all things mortgages, but the banks are lending. We are already seeing more competitive lending coming to market, and we will see more and more over the next 6 months. When rates are higher and banks feel a bit more comfortable, they will want to lend money at these levels, and they will come to the market with attractive products and deals. And, you know, you often find, you know, reduced fees actually when rates are higher. That's something you often see in terms of sort of arrangement fees as well. The legal work is ready. We've done our due diligence on the scheme, and the developers and our lawyers are ready to act and continue with the legals once everything's sorted.
Comparatively good service charge there. Kieran's just pointed out that it's good, isn't it? I mean, I guess there's no swimming pool or gym or anything like that, which means that service charge reflects that. But all the same, these are the things that landlords look at. These are the things that tenants look at. It's very competitive, 172.
Yeah, I mean, that's something on my mind. I've seen a very smart building launched in Manchester this week, and it's been all over the world, this building. But it's apparently the service charge is £10 a square foot. Wow. So that is going to really hurt your return. So yeah, I mean, look, it's very important to actually try and keep those costs down. And there are plenty of lifestyle amenities for people to live and use in York. You don't need a gym in the building. You don't want that really pressure on you as a landlord.
On your point there, Will, as well, if they're starting with a £10 service charge, as soon as they do the valuations upwards, it's going to be proportionate. It's going to blow the socks off you. It's just going to absolutely destroy your yield in Manchester.
Yeah, I've never heard of anything like that. But look,
quick question, Will, from a live question from Matthew down in South Africa. Short-term tenancies, is it allowable?
Yeah, there's no restrictions in York on it, and this building doesn't restrict it in the lease.
Okay, so when for other people, again, what I mean by that, because everything's a short-term lease short hold lease in the UK, which is a year or 6 months. What we're talking about is what I call Airbnb style. In other words, a week, 3 days, which is great for York because they've got so many tourists that go in there. So, Matthew, The answer is yes.
And I would say, Chris, to add to that, that you're right. I mean, there's a lot of buildings sort of promoted with very high yields now. I think it's a bit of a tactic, but is it genuinely going to rent at 60, 70%, 80% occupancy throughout the year? And this would, without doubt. And a lot of the things that we see would.
Yeah. We're always cautious at Holborn, you know that. We're always cautious about putting stuff out there like, you know, if you have a flat and you rent it out on an Airbnb style, it'll rent out for 52 weeks of the year, etc. That's just not going to happen. But yeah, we're always cautious. But I mean, what a beautiful city and what a great place to have somewhere that basically you can use yourself.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, good, strong developer. We're taking advantage of the market at the moment, which is a little bit slower. There's a little bit less confidence from developers in, they know their product's solid, they know their prices are solid, but the market's a little bit slower. So it's a good time to be a buyer at the moment. And that's what we are at IPG. We're a buyer, we're an underwriter. We commit to buying the project. So we're, you know, taking this project on in the current market and feeling like we can try and take advantage of this current environment, which is what we can do here.
Questions just come in from Mr. Anonymous. And you've already touched on it. I want you just to go back and answer his question. He was late joining, but is the developer reliable? I think you mentioned this is not your first experience with them.
Yeah, they're building a project for us in on the other side of the city called Fifth Grove. It was an NHS facility. We sold that before works had started. They've knocked it down. They've dug the foundations. They've got the shell and core up, and they're handing over in January. So they're absolutely bang on track with their completion date on that project. And they've been around 40 years. So you only have to ring up a local agent in York and you'll get a very, very good track record about them. I think they're not as popular as they were because they've given the project to us. I think a few agents were a little bit upset about that. But no, they're a good company.
Right, questions come in. You can hear my phone going off. Worldwide watchers today. I've never had more than 5,000 watch this show, and it is a show. Please ask, is the deposit held in escrow?
So it's not. It's released to the developer, but there's an insurance. So there's an NHBC insurance guarantee on the deposit. So we take a 20% deposit of the purchase price, and half of that is insured through the policy. So in theory, the other half is at risk because it is released to the developer. Okay.
I hope that answers that question. Sorry to interrupt you, but I do like to ask questions as we're going along and also mix it up a bit. Sorry, next slide. Oh, there's that it. Questions. That's it.
Slide. Yeah, I'm on to questions. There's another question. Were there only 299 units built back in 2022? And that is correct.
Yeah. Okay, well, look, that's great. We love York. And I certainly love York. And I love a Paris chocolate orange. Let's just touch on you. I don't want to throw you under the bus. You've got Edinburgh, the Carrick up in Edinburgh. How's that doing? Maybe a quick refresh for people that are on.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Yeah, so we've got that project live. They're scraping the site now, about to start the foundations, ready in just over a year as well. Again, that's with a very reputable developer. We've done over 10 projects with ourselves, Mandale Homes. We've got 10 units left there.
Wow.
So,
purchase price approximate, not wanting to.
250-ish for one beds and around about the 300 mark. Just either
and
side.
I know that Pete, you've been up and actually walked the bricks on.
Yeah, I've been up there. Edinburgh is still extremely hot. If you look at the statistics for the whole of the UK, Edinburgh is still top just at the moment on capital appreciation. Again, you know, you've got limited stock there. It's a great city, fantastic universities, and you know, I like it. I do. I like it.
Well, now I'm going to ask about the other one. It's amazing, isn't it? You got York, Edinburgh, and I'm going to go down across to Oxford. So, I mean, you've got some key locations there, Will. How's Oxford doing? Don't tell me it's all sold out.
It's not quite. Chris, there's been a bit of a shift here in terms of we're looking for quality now, really good quality locations, really strong locations. And that's what we're doing and trying to bring something a little bit different, a little bit more boutiquey, add a bit more value than perhaps some others. So that's what we're doing. But yeah, we've got 2 units left in an Oxford project, which is in Headington, which again is right by the University of Oxford Brookes. And there is, again, a massive problem with property in Oxford. They have a pretty useless council and planning department, and they have a very wealthy city that's 40 minutes down the road to London, depending on how quickly you drive. But it's a very wealthy city, and we saw a lot of interest in that project.
Pete, you actually drove up to Oxford and had a look at that one, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. And I just a small fact, but Oxford City have just got planning permission for a brand new football stadium and training facility. And when you look at the regeneration area of just outside Oxford, when you go past the mini factory, if any of you have been up there, that's super impressive. Again, you're never going to go wrong with Oxford. There are certain areas in Oxford though that aren't so good, and so you've got to be selective about what you go and see. But you know, the central core of Oxford is always going to be Oxford.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to change countries now, Will, just whilst we've got you here. I know, obviously, you've got a great track record in Berlin. I think probably you've done 20 developments in Berlin so far, IPG. Is that right?
Yeah, I've got a slide that's ever so slightly out of date here, but we have 20 in Berlin and 4 more in Leipzig. So yeah, they're the eastern side of Germany, the former East, is still very interesting. There's a huge amount of economic growth going on. So
we're not going to go into too much detail on this, but anybody that does want more, number one, there are webinars available, funny enough. And 2, Will's always there and his team's always there. But so we've got Leipzig, we've got Berlin, we've mentioned Oxford, Edinburgh, obviously. Anything else coming up in the UK?
In the UK, you've got me thinking now. Sonning, there's a small development in Sonning, which is quite near Henley. We're quite excited about.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's nice, on the river.
Yeah, Pete, I'll get you for lunch down there. There's a nice pub.
Yeah, let's go down there.
We could take you for.
I love that area.
Yeah,
Sonning on Thames.
George Clooney lives down there.
I tell you what, I'm just going to jump back a bit. Somebody's asked a question. How, with regard, obviously, we're going back to York now. What do you need? What happens now? Say somebody needs a little bit more information. One, they contact us, obviously, or you go direct to Will and his team. But process of buying, reservation fee is 5,000?
2.5.
2,500. So that's a good starter. 2,500. That reserves your unit. You want one on the second floor, which has got a window facing. So we can help out on all that, selecting the right unit. And then 20% minus the 5,000 in 28 days.
Yeah, and if you do it in 28 days, if you exchange in 28 days, we give you £1,000 towards your legal fees. So we'll give you 2.5, but we'll give you 3.5 back. So you just need to exchange the contract 28 days from receiving the actual contract. So it's not from reservation. It's probably about a week or 10 days after reservation that the 28 days starts.
Yeah, we're talking about probably more like 35 to 40 days. And the next stage is after that, you've paid your 2,500, you reserved it. You're then going to pay your 20%, and then the rest is due on completion, along with your mortgage. And I always say on all of these, always speak to the mortgage team, Will's mortgage team, our mortgage team, for your clients to get pre-approval. That these days is essential. So, always get that. And mortgages, I saw on a previous slide, you're talking about 70%. I always talk about 65% mortgages, 35% deposit, because I'm cautious. And rates, let's not get too embroiled in the mortgage market. But there is good indication with NatWest, etc. They're bringing the rates down. They certainly have for residential property for residents of the UK, and that will follow suit for investors. So, although we've seen some extraordinary interest rate rises in the last 18 months, which we won't go into, but we're now talking about 65%. And I get asked the question every day: what is the average interest rate? It's difficult. Depends on where you are in the world, what your nationality is, etc. But
Can I just add, Chris, that there's no truth in the rumour that I caused all of those 14 different rate increases either.
No, it was somebody quasi.
But you've just got the banks now. They've got a bit more clarity in the future. When rates were going up and up and up every month, they didn't know where they could borrow money themselves. They didn't know where they could lend money. So they were in a little bit of a flux. So they just go boom and just give you a very nasty rate at that time. But now that the rates have slowed, and perhaps there won't be another increase, perhaps we are at the top. People suggested one more, but the economic data that came out of the US wasn't strong enough for the US to put them up. So the rumors are they could have come down. So it's an interesting scenario that the economic data is lower than predicted, and yet rates could follow the other way. So
yeah, the capital markets boys are actually indicating now that they do see that we're at the top of that growth trajectory, and we will. Yeah, there could always be a little shock somewhere along the line, heaven forbid, but we do see that we're at the top of that trend, and it will start to come back the other way, but it could take a little while before it gets there.
And people buying property now have got a bit of money. I mean, you know, they're borrowing a bit less, 50, 60% loan to value. They've got a bit of money they want to protect. You know, that's your kind of buyer at the moment. It's probably not someone that is absolutely spending every penny they've got to get on the property. Those kind of people at the moment are certainly in the UK renting, but they will be buying. You know, they want to buy property. So as soon as those rates come down, there's going to be a real push for people to purchase in the UK. And this is a good time to be actually going shopping.
And for you, wealth managers that are overseas, it is a great opportunity. There's quite a lot of interest in getting money out of places like Africa, where they want to balance their portfolios. I was talking with one of our people down in Durban, and this investor is a serious investor, and he said, "Look, I'm actually going to balance my portfolio, where I'm looking with my brother to take out half of what I've got in Africa and put it in the UK." We still deem it being a very safe environment, whereas the African market is still, you know, it can be fraught, and he just wanted to balance it. He's not saying that the South African market's going to drop. He's just saying that I feel that the weighting needs to be balanced between the UK and Africa.
And the rand is only one way it's going to go, that's for sure. History has shown that. So we go South Africa are, you know, one of our most important areas, that's for sure. And certainly, I know I touched on it earlier on, certainly when it comes to Germany, South Africa have got a real affiliation with Germany. So, yeah, that's been great. I think, Will, that's it. Unless you've got anything else to add, I think that's a great show. Put to bed. We need to run the titles.
Yeah. Just please reach out to us. You know, we've got the team in South Africa, we've got guys in Asia, we've got guys in the UK. I'm here with Jeremy and Chloe and Matthew. So you know, please just reach out to us if you'd like any help discussing this project. We're here, and obviously Chris has got everything as well.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Thanks.
I'd just like to say thank you for a great project, Will, and I highly recommend that people do get on this fairly quickly, because there's only 31 units, and we've said this before, and it is frustrating when we actually profess that this is a great project. People are very slow off the mark, and then they come back and say, well, we want X. And we say, they've gone. And sometimes people don't quite get, when you've got a relatively small project like this, it's not going to be hanging around for ages. There's no purpose in it. The price point is right. The value proposition is right. So, you know, I just highly recommend that you look at it, and as part of your portfolio, this is a great investment.
And of course, this and all other projects that we got are on our website, propertyinvestment.com, along with webinars, lots of webinars, so you can go and spend a whole weekend binge watching webinars and learn all you need. So, Pete, thank you very much.